good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of our Brunch and Learn webinar series. We're thrilled to have you tuning in with us today and hope that you're all doing well. I'm Sofia Vereshkina, the Communications and Social Media Coordinator at the Climate Reality Project Canada. I'm joined today by my colleague Matthew Chapman and our speaker of the hour, Marco Viviani, Vice President of Strategic Development at Communato. This Brunch and Learn series is an opportunity for us to explore the topics covered in the National Climate League standings. The 2019 standings feature 15 primary sustainability indicators benchmarking climate action among participating cities across Canada. It also features examples of best practices in those areas. We invite you to download the standings at ncl.climatehub.ca and to explore our webinar series at hubflix.climatehub.ca. For today's feature, we're looking forward to discussing car sharing. We'll discuss the many benefits car sharing presents and how we can implement infrastructure and policies that support its existence. As mentioned earlier, we have the pleasure of being joined today by Marco Viviani, Vice President of Strategic Development at Communato. Marco is the Vice President of Strategic Development at Communato, the most important car sharing service in Canada and the oldest in America. Communato operates in 13 cities in Canada and in Paris, France. After studying physics at the University of Milan in Italy, he worked for almost 10 years at the World Wildlife Fund and afterwards as Vice President for the Italian branch of the Eco Institute. His involvement in car sharing began in 1997. Since 2003, he has worked with Communato in Canada. Before we start off, I'll quickly remind everyone that you can pose questions at any time using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will visit some of these during the Q&A period following Marco's presentation. I also want to mention that a recording of this webinar will be made available on our YouTube channel and on our Hubflix in the days following the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today, Marco. The floor is yours. You're still muted, Marco.
Classic mistake. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Thanks a lot for being here. I hope that you will find interesting the information that I have to share with you. I will start sharing my presentation, hoping that you will see it well. Of course, when you test it, it works, and then I guess you don't see nothing, isn't it?
Yes, we see your screen right now.
Oh, okay, but just the screen,
I think
not
you just need to click present.
Okay, oh, perfect. A little delay. So 2 words about Communato. Communato is the oldest car sharing company in North America. We started in 1994 and is actually the largest. We operate with different branches in Edmonton, in the southwestern Ontario, in Toronto, in Kingston, Ottawa, and Gatineau, in several cities in Quebec, Montreal, Quebec, and so on. And in Halifax, and since 2012 in Paris, in France. One of the particularity of Communato as other pioneer in this field is that despite the fact of being a company, and if you wanted the question, we can speak why. It's a social, environmentally driven company. Means that our main focus and our main mission is to build a sustainable local mobility service in complementarity with collective transportation and active mobility in order to reduce car ownership and usage. And since new share mobility has become a buzz in different cities, just to make the difference, I would like to highlight as our mission is not to try just to get a slice of this pie of the mobility market, the now excited mini startup, but is really to build a local sustainable transportation service. And this has a big impact in the way we see things and we realize things. And this is very important for someone that wants to propose car sharing in the city or support car sharing in the city, to make the difference between what is, according to us at least, worth and what is not as much. Just a remind, I guess that probably most of you know what is car sharing, but just have a reminder of one of the most common definition. Car sharing is a membership-based service, and this is very important. And in which people can access to a fleet of car 24 hours, 7 days a week at unattended self-service location without having to sign a written agreement every time they reserve a car. All these little details, the 24 hours, 7 days, the unattended location, and the membership based, are what makes the difference between with other kind of service like local rental, and are focused to propose a service that is an alternative to car ownership. When you propose something that is want to replace car ownership, well, you establish a long-term relation with your user, and that's why the membership-based service is not just one time. It could be for someone, but what you try to build is a long-term relation, self-service that provide really something that is an alternative to car ownership. If you are closed during the night, well, people will be less keen to, for example, abandon a private car for the service. If we put in a kind of chart like this, where we have the mobility needs, and according distances and according flexibility, well, we see that car sharing fits a kind of hole in the middle that cover and complete the other modes of transportation or mobility options. And because since the price is connected to the usage, well, it tends to be the smaller as possible, giving space to the other modes. In this sense, it completes the other modes, but at the same time, it helps them create a more long-standing relation with their user. In many areas, in many situations where you need at least once in a while in a car, if there's no car sharing option, the result is this: a private car covers most of the mobility need of people, leaving just few space to transit, walking, and sometimes taxi in really rare case. And this is what we see in most of the case. So cutting the property of the car as a way to access to this mobility is a way to reduce dependency from the car, reduce the usage, and of course, reduce the number of cars. But most of the people know, the effect, or have an idea of the effect of car sharing on the number of cars in circulation. So I would like to share just some study that maybe you haven't seen. This has been done in 2017 by HESC Business School in Montreal. They collect the number of registered car in each census subdivision, and they realize and they calculate the reduction in number of private car in this subdivision if there's a commuter station in 500 meters. And the results were quite concluding. Let's say that, sorry, again, there's a automatic slide, so you will see it again and again, sorry. The results are that for each station that usually has between 2 and 3 cars in average, 39 private cars are replaced. And if the subway is available in the same area, that number grow up to 62. And the presence of a car sharing station multiplied by 5 the effect of the subway as a way to reduce car ownership. So we see that it could be a very, relatively speaking, effective way. But the result and the effect is not only on the number of cars, it's also on the usage. When you don't own a car, but you use in a collective way, well, you are much more open to choose a different mode of transportation, and it's not just taking up your keys and going out and leaving, is evaluating in a more rational way which is the best option. Is it biking? Is it walking? Is it transit? Is it taxi? Is it ride hailing or whatever? And this reflected in this study done by the L'École Polytechnique de Montréal, comparing households in the same areas with the same socio-demographic characteristics, and realizing that households doing car sharing, they were using the car 4 times less than household owning 1 car, and 6 times less in number that those having to owning 2 cars. And of course, this reflects in the usage of other modes. The people car sharing uses the double the biking and transit than people household owning a car, and this it's rather obvious. What does it mean using a car share in terms of usage? Because of course we could say, okay, yes, what's worth if you just move from your usage of the private car to a car sharing in the same way. In reality, we see that people they reduce their car usage. A typical active user, so means that there's also other that are not active in a month, in Montreal make a little bit less than 10 trips a month with free floating and 3 trips with the station-based car for something that is a little bit more than 10 hours driving or reservation, because it's not necessarily driving in a month. That you can understand it's much less than an average driver. That bring to these figures that is the calculated by, again, a study by École Polytechnique de Montréal and text earlier, that says that people reduce of 38% their annual kilometer driven by car in average. So it means that someone maybe, yes, will increase because, you know, his need change, but in general, all over, there's a reduction of a little bit less than 40% in kilometer driven. That, and considering that the car sharing fleet is, at least in our case, but in most of the cases, more efficient than regular, the average car, this brings to a reduction of 1.2 tons per year per person in GHG emissions. That, if you remember, well, probably the younger don't remember, but something like a decade ago, the challenge for Canada was reduction, the reducing of 1 ton per habitant, our GHG emission burden. Well, you see that, you know, with this solution, you can reach that goal. And again, we see that not just in replacing car, but also in reducing emission. This is a relatively strong way of some other data shared in other cities by a study done in 2016 by University of Berkeley, and summarizing the fact that in different city car sharing, in this case it was free-floating car sharing, could reduce something from 2 to 11 cars, and bringing to a reduction of in GHG emission from 4 to 18%. We made some years ago an estimation. Well, the estimation has been done by an engineering company, Texel, saying that this has been done more than 10 years ago, but the idea, the perspective at the time was that 8% of the household in the region of Montreal could have been using car sharing as a potential, and this would have meant 100,000 households for a little bit more than 100,000 tons of GHG gas emission reduced per year. And if we see on the right, this was the plan done by the city of Montreal for the whole area, with different measures, in which the green one is active transportation and demand management, and the orange is transit and parking. Well, we see that car sharing could have a relevant part, but this part could be as small as the dark green that correspond to a slow growth, or as big as the overall part that correspond to a full potential scenario. Now, some year later, if we look at where we are somewhere in the middle of the two. But this means that with car sharing, you can do little things or you can do big things. We saw that, relatively speaking, it's very effective, but then if it's just a niche of the citizen that adopt it, well, the effect will be a smaller one. If we are able to spread it, or having a larger part of the population using, well, the effect could be relevant. There's this new calculator done by the Shared Use Mobility Center in the US, allowing to simulate in different cities, I guess there are like hundreds of cities, how to, which would be the impact of different shared and transit on climate greenhouse gases emission. And so, I just made, it's funny, it's interesting, to play with. You can find a city that is similar to the one you're living and trying to see what's the effect. But I just made it with Boston, and looking at the fact that if in Boston there are a little bit less, but 2,000 car sharing car, like it's the case in Montreal, well, the effect is a reduction of 5% of overall emissions in the city. That's something, as enough significant to be considered by policies. That's not always the case. Car sharing is also reducing expenses. Our member, you see, spend in average $750 per year in car sharing. That's as a 90% of the case is the only car they have in their household. So kind of significant compared to the several thousands of dollars spent by a household with one or more car. That's what established Todd Littman of the Victoria Transport Policy Institute some years ago, comparing a family with using car sharing in between other modes and spending something like $2,000 per year in transportation, and a household with one car or two cars. But it's also, and this is quite important, it's a change in perspective. You know, when you own a car, you want to park it. You want to park it in your background, you want to park it in front, and it becomes like a right that you have to have street, to have snow shoveling, to have parking everywhere, to make a speed when you are in a hurry. When you don't own a car, but well, you have a different perspective on things. You want more space for your children to play. You want more transit to move. You want more mobility solution, and that changed completely the relation that we have with the city. Buying a car is still a very emotional act, more than a rational one. Well, there's a lot of now players that are in this space, and you know, just into brackets, towards about this, not all what is called car sharing has the same effect, you know, and not all that is called car sharing is car sharing according to that definition, but has the same impact. And we saw during the pandemic, there was service that stayed, give cars for free to health worker, and you know, they understood that they were essential to people for them to go to make grocery, go to work if it's essential work, and so on. And other, they just said, okay, we are just a service there to, let's say, to make money. And so, now it's too complicated. We just shut down. And, the mobility were, at least in car sharing, divided in these two options. As I was saying, no, I won't say, but there's different way of doing car sharing. There's free floating, cars going from one side to the other, and round trip, car that are reserved and makes buckle to come back to the same place, and the combination of two. And these two has not the same effect. This is a study done in Germany, where this different type of car sharing has been compared in terms of reduction of car ownership 1 year when joining and 1 year after have been joined. And we see that the free floating, even if has an effect, is relatively small. Round trip is much higher. And when we combine the two of them, means providing a fair structure that allows people to use one or the other according to their need, well, the effect is even much bigger. So even in car sharing, the way of doing things, the kind of service, the pricing, the zone, the cars have an effect that could be very different. And if I have to suggest how to measure this, I think that the mission that is behind a service is important. And I think that 3 characteristics are very important to check. The affordability, when a service is just for people that can afford it, and you understand what I mean, well, its effect will be probably limited. Availability, so the presence not just in the core of the city where there are more demand, but all over a territory. and the complementarity with the other transportation system. Means this a service that fits and come in to complement the offer that is already existing, or is just something to grab a part of the market that is is covered by other means of transportation.
Marco, sorry to interrupt your presentation. Yeah. I just wanted to mention it's 11:56, so if you could wrap up within the next 4 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, we go to the last slide. The future is still, even if like in Montreal we have 3.2% of the households, is still a niche service. But that was the case also of the cars. You know, starting at the beginning of the century, it took around 50 years before that the car start ramping up like we know now. And if we see and make a comparison between the number of cars in the early of the last century and the number of car sharing, we see a similar growth. So, you know, I guess that now we face this point. We have a good solution that is very effective, but it could stay like a niche, or we can make it explode like was the case for car ownership. And so I would suggest you to have a look at this news study and reporting about the Car Sharing City Awards done by the Car Sharing Association, and is available for free on their website, where they highlighted what is needed to be done by a city that is the major player for developing car sharing in and how this could be done has been done in certain cities. And this, you know, it's gathering in 3 kind of recommendation. A city needs to express a vision and leadership, giving a strong recognition to car sharing. Car sharing has not to be like, you know, something that is in the space, but a city has to appropriate of this and fix objective and those objective of growth. Not just saying, oh, it's a good solution, but, you know, integrating policy, demanding operator to achieve objectives. And on the other side has to define a policy framework that fits with that objective and provide resources for it. And the biggest resource is parking space. You know, again and again, cities tell us, yes, but you know, there's a competition for parking space. Not understanding that car sharing is a way to solve this competition for parking space and reduce the need of this. And of course, partnership. Seeing a car sharing operator as partner and promote the integration between the different modes, that is taxi, bike sharing, transit, and all the other options. One example that is really, and I opted for a small size example, is the city of Ghent, that really defined a plan, an action plan for car sharing, targeting 10% of the population becoming car sharing member, and putting all the measure and the resources necessary, including large company. In Canada, we have some good example coming. For sure, Vancouver, that has the most comprehensive parking policy in case. Calgary, that has introduced a new parking policy that, you know, will be implemented in the next days. And Montreal, that since 2008 has put in place a combined packages, combined transit, car sharing, and bike share. So things are moving, but of course, we are still facing the challenge. Do we keep this as a small, nice niche service, or are we able to make it ramp up and become a mainstream solution? Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Marco. That was a wonderful presentation. So we have a few questions here. If anybody needs to go, feel free to do so, but I think we're going to have a 10 to 15 Q&A period. So first question is from Danielle from Ottawa. She says she has already used shared vehicle services in the past and is now used to it, but she wonders how it's possible to convince owners of private vehicles to do the same.
Well, for sure, the example is the best way to convince people. It's something relatively new that people are afraid to use, in the sense that they are afraid that they will lose the freedom that the car promised us since 100 and something years. So the for sure, the example and speaking and reading about is a really strong way to convince people to test it and then to see if it works for you. Of course, as I was saying, the city has a major role. If the city speaks about car sharing, if the city fixes objectives in its policy, if the city gives space to car sharing, well, it makes it credible and as an alternative. The vision is that at a certain point we will have a car sharing car parked every 2-3 blocks. That is, accessible as now is bike sharing or whatever, and that people just use it massively, like a collective means of transportation.
Similarly,
I guess that, example from one side and policy from the other are the two keys for convincing. But it's a long. It's something cultural. It's something really. Having a car is something deep in our culture now. There was a humorist, I guess you say it like this in English, that published something about this some months ago, saying she saw in her life more times a car advertising than a smile from her mother. And that's true. We see so many car advertising for all our life that then saying, oh, I just can't live without, it's sometimes difficult to believe, but it works, and it's possible.
Similarly, actually, we have a question here that asks, what are the factors that determine whether Communauto's business model is feasible for a new city? Is it density? Is it culture, as you mentioned? Or is it other factors?
Car sharing now is available in almost everywhere in the world. We are helping a Moroccan company to grow its service, and okay, still Morocco is not the more complicated country in the world, but still, it's something very different from us. So I would say that it's something that could be viable in many contexts. The point is the business model actually is probably different, and this sometimes is the mistake, that we think that there's a one way of doing and it's for everybody. I just make an example. Small community could have frequently 1, 2, 3, 5 cars from the city that could be shared in the weekend or in the night, in the evening, with the citizens, with lowering the cost of owning a fleet. And this could be a model for small collectivity, or kind of peer-to-peer car sharing between citizens of the same areas, and could adapt to that, while a free-floating top-down model like we often do, it's more suitable for bigger city and so on. So it's I think there's viable model possible, for different cities, but you have to find which is the right one for you. And anyway, when you want to make it big and we want to make it effective, in terms of reducing car ownership and giving mobility, I think that you have to understand that it's not a matter of money. You can make it profitable, sustainable, economically speaking. Communoto is profitable, but you will never be able to make it a profit as the main goal. It's a mobility service like transit. It can be sustainable economically, but like transit, bike sharing, like you do it because you want a service, not you because you want to be rich. Because
actually, oh, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I had a follow-up question actually, because you were talking about a lot of companies just want a slice of the mobility market. So how do you feel like, how will all of these actors interact in the future if car sharing it becomes more and more popular? How do you see this developing with all of them perhaps having different goals as well, not necessarily having socially conscious goals?
We don't really know, but I mean, let's see what's happened with this pandemic situation, and there was an interesting article on blog TO at Toronto recently about this. I mean, car sharing company that closed down, Maven before this, Zipcar in Vancouver, Enterprise is thinking or closed down during pandemia in Toronto. Car2Go had left just earlier, but similar reason, if the pandemic would have been done, they were left, while Communoto and Modo in Vancouver are ramping up in an incredible way. June this year has been the best a month in Communoto history in terms of new member. Because people are searching for mobility solution. All the people that say, "Oh, at a certain time I will use it," they are thinking seriously, and because people search for mobility options, and so probably there will be a consolidation. Actors that are more focused on profit, they abandoned before, because it's a really long-term service that you have to put in place. And so after 3-5 years, if you don't see the magnificent economical result that you expected, you give up. So what we expect is consolidation around some player. We hope and we think that mission-driven organization like us, Modo, Cambio in Germany and Belgium, Mobility in Switzerland, and will have a brighter future than even bigger player that they come and go.
Okay, thank you. So now we have a few questions about autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
Nelson from Vancouver wants to know more. This was a broad question, but I think it would be interesting to hear about recent developments and what you see in store for autonomous vehicles in the future or near future.
Well, there's the theory and the practical aspect. The theory is autonomous cars could be a solution to make car sharing even more effective. Just imagine the idea that moving a car that could move even during the night, even at low speed, to just rebalance in order to fulfill better the demand the next morning. Could improve the interest of people and the effectiveness of the service. So having less car and having a better service. This is the theory. The practical aspect is, well, will technology be able to reach this kind of goals in an urban, in a city situation, will be costly, affordable. Is of course when cars cost 100,000, even it stay like a luxury product. And what we see is that since here there's a tendency from car manufacturer to add autonomous feature as a gadget to increase the value of their car, but not as a way to break the dependency by the car. What we are afraid is that instead of being used to have more autonomous shared car, autonomous feature will be used to allow people to drive even further, increasing urban sprawl. It's much easier to have an autonomous car or on a highway to go 100 kilometers from the city, so that people could go live far away from the city, than having autonomous car driving in the city itself with the mixity of usage that the street has. So we are interested in this for sure. We think it could solve a lot of our technical problem and make of car sharing an even better solution, but it depends a lot from how this technology will be driven and how the policy framework, the economic framework will drive this technology to be in the future.
Maybe 1 to 2 final questions. So a follow-up question would be concerning autonomous vehicles as well. Véronique from Montreal asks, when do you expect autonomous vehicles to be allowed on Canadian roads by regulators? And how do Communauto's mid to long-term plans take into account this new entrant into the mobility market?
Don't know, don't really know, just make a parallel. We start speaking about having electric, full electric shared cars around, seriously, I mean, around 2000. And at that time, I remember we have a project that, with the government and the city, by the transit agency and so on, to have a free-floating electric fleet in Montreal. It took 15 years before we had the first regular speed car allowed to be driven in Canada. That was the Nissan Leaf that we bought the first 50 arriving in Canada. And, so at a certain time, there's a technology buzz. It seems like it's tomorrow, and then it takes 10, 15 years before it becomes something possible. Well, and I feel that this is the same with autonomous vehicle. We spoke and we are speaking a lot now, but put together all the elements to make it really a viable solution would take 10, 15, 20 years, I don't know, but it's not tomorrow. As for electric vehicles, car sharing fleet is the best place where you can experiment the behavior of people and this car in the street. And for sure, there's this interest of Communauto to having access to this technology, and at the same time to give feedback to the society about how it could be used and what we have to care about. I don't think that there will be, like someone writes sometimes, the invasion of this new company, with autonomous car, like it's, sometimes we speak about Uber, arriving, it's a business model completely different when you have to buy a car instead of paying low price a driver. it's a completely business model different, and they have hard time with the one they have now. I see very hard how they could be, so it's a long-term work, I guess, for us and for others to arrive to a real usage.
Mm-hmm. And final question about electric car sharing. So what do you think is the potential and the limitations for electric car sharing?
It's a potential, Comnoto with a little bit less of 100 cars is the largest car sharing fleet in electric in Canada, the second or the third in North America. But it's still 100 cars that is now, not so big. It's a potential because, of course, it could increase the benefit, at least in terms of GHG emissions. I showed the example of Boston in that calculator, if you like to play. If you electrify all the car sharing fleet that proposed, you pass from 5%, that was the simulation I was doing, to 5.6%. So it's interesting, but it's not huge. The main effect from car sharing is the change in usage, the change in habits. And so now the point is electric car are too expensive and the autonomy is still limited. And when you have to convince people to abandon their own car, you need to propose something that, has similar benefits. So, could be integrated in fleet, but if we would like to have all electric, I think we won't be able to fulfill to the main mission of car sharing, that is replacing car ownership. That doesn't mean that the potential that it won't change. The price of electric car going down very fast, and the autonomy range is increasing incredibly. So it's probably like a matter of time. It was the same with hybrid. 15 years ago, people were saying, why you don't have more hybrids? Now we have, I didn't count, but probably more than 1,500 hybrid cars. And it's normal. It's when they are available is what we buy, and we don't even think about. So probably will be the same with electric. It's a matter of time.
Okay, thank you so much, Marco.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
The people attending.
And thank you everyone who tuned in today. We're happy you were all able to make it. Also, be on the lookout for new Brunch and Learn webinars as we host them every few weeks. You can find many different types of webinars and past and upcoming in our Hubflix gallery, which you can find at hubflix.climatehub.ca. So thank you everyone once again, and have